generations of the Polish and Jewish communities. My name is Karen Pakula. In just a few moments, it would be my pleasure to welcome back Poland's Chief Rabbi Michael Schudrich, who will be speaking to us today about the tremendous efforts of his community to support the influx of refugees. But first, I'd like to thank Polaron for hosting this event. And I'd like to say, in the spirit of reconciliation, that ASPJ acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. At the end of our talk, we'll have a Q&A session, so please use the Q&A function to ask questions. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine grinds on into its 4th month, the United Nations estimates that 6.6 million people have fled the country. Of these, more than half, or 3.5 million, have arrived in Poland. It's a staggering number, which The Economist says eclipses the intake of all the other EU countries combined. As men of fighting age from 18 to 60 are banned from leaving, more than 90% of these refugees are women and children. They need help finding homes, schools, jobs, hot meals. And it's believed that as many as 600,000 are staying with Polish families. The rest live with friends and relatives in dormitories, hotels, and repurposed holiday resorts. The Polish government has been generous in its support. Refugees can apply for social assistance, including a monthly allowance of 500 zlotys or $160 Australian per child, and the right to healthcare. But the heavy lifting has been left to the Polish people themselves, including the Jewish community, who are deeply involved. And now to our guest. Born and raised in New York, Rabbi Schudrich arrived in Poland in 1992 when the country was still a fledgling democracy. In 2000, he became the Rabbi of Warsaw and Łódź. In 2004, the Chief Rabbi of Poland. For the past 2 decades, he's been the voice of Poland's Jewish community and has overseen the rebirth of Jewish life in Poland. Today, the community is stronger than ever. Hello and welcome, Rabbi Schudrich. Do we have you? I think you need, can you turn your microphone on and video on, please? Thank you. Hello.
Yes.
Oh,
how's that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much. So, yes, look, Warsaw's population grew by 250,000 in the first 3 weeks of the war. And I'm wondering, what's life like there now? Is it noticeably more crowded, and has the city changed in other ways with the refugees' arrivals?
Well, it's a lot less obvious than it was at the beginning. At the beginning, you really saw it at the train stations when people were arriving, because they basically came from the border up to Warsaw by train, sometimes by bus. I would say there's a very interesting kind of a melting into society, because while Poland and Ukraine are 2 different countries and 2 different people, the languages are similar, the culture is somewhat similar, and so it's not nearly as obvious now as it was 3 months ago. The place where you find that it's crowded is it's hard now to rent apartments in Warsaw, because some of the refugees were able to rent apartments early on, and now there's actually an apartment shortage in both Warsaw and Krakow.
Right, okay. So what motivated the Jewish community to start its refugee project in the first place?
Well, I'm sorry. It was just very obvious to us. It's that any human being would see that you need to be involved, and any Jew would see that this is a mitzvah, and any Polish Jew whose parents and grandparents desperately needed such help 80-something years ago during the Shoah really brings an additional level of sensitivity, of awareness, of desire to help.
Right, okay. So how many volunteers do you have, and how are they helping? What do they do?
Okay. An interesting thing happened. On the second day of the war, the different local Jewish organizations got together, and we decided to create a crisis management team to be able to deal with all different things, of which we didn't even know what it was going to be. But soon we realized, we first thing to do was we created a hotline. People could call us and find out information before they cross the border, after they cross the border. And this way we're able to guide people and help them immediately, which was really a very important first step. And then there was a question of housing, of food, of medical care, of legal care. And then also some cases, because of the tremendous trauma, also dealing with emotional support, schooling for children, really everything and anything. And some also because when people fled, they were able to flee with a carry-on bag because whatever they had to be able to carry. So, and it's, a woman with 2-3 little kids, they couldn't carry a whole lot because sometimes she had to carry some of the kids.
Yeah.
And sorry, just a moment, please. Michael, just on Zoom.
Just to fill everybody in, Rabbi Schudrich is at the airport. He's just arrived home.
And so yes, everything okay. And so they brought a small little carry-on, and all of a sudden they finally reached safety after days of making the decision to flee, sometimes days of getting to the border. At the beginning, even days standing at the border. At the beginning, even people stood for 3 days in the cold, and it was in March. It was cold here, and they finally get across and they get to safety, and then they kind of start realizing that they don't have enough clothes for the kids, for themselves. They don't have they need toys for the kids, or they should have toys. All the kinds of things, Pampers. And so what we did in Warsaw and Lublin and Krakow, we created a kind of almost like a warehouse of whatever you might need. And we just received donations from the community, from non-Jews, from abroad. And we had long lines of refugees, some of them Jewish, some not, to be able to give them whatever they needed. Right. So when you ask what were the volunteers doing, a little bit of everything. And it was, for us, as the Jewish community of Warsaw and Poland, it was really learning very quickly what you're supposed to do. And if you reflect on this crisis management center we created, that the last few hundred years, we Polish Jews have been the crisis. 3 months ago, we became management center. Mm. And it's amazing to see a community that, because of history and the cruel history, I'm talking now about the Polish Jewish community, the last few hundred years has not been overwhelmingly positive, as an understatement. And we were used to being on the receiving end. And in the last 3 months, we now learned we also know how to give. And I'm so proud of our community here, because we really have been giving and giving, volunteering time, manning the hotline, helping people when they arrive, some people taking people into their homes, and then helping with staffing the what I'm calling the warehouse of goods, and.
Right. Do you? How do you help them get out of Ukraine, or is that through a different agency?
That we really haven't done on any kind of scale. Sometimes people may call us and say, where are we supposed to cross the border? Because there are 6 to 8 different border crossings, and different border crossings had different waiting times. And so that's one way, but we did not go into the Ukraine.
Right.
We left that for others. I was involved with certain cases, especially with Holocaust survivors. But generally, that's not something we were doing. We left that to real tzaddikim, who were going into the Ukraine and doing that, including something that cannot be published, Israeli diplomats who were going into the Ukraine on the other side of the border crossing and finding Jews and bringing them across.
Right, right. So you said before most of the refugees aren't Jewish, but you are finding some who are. Are they? Do they get help in any other ways? Or
I'm sorry, the Jews or the non-Jews?
the Jews, sort of.
Well, so let's say our approach was from the beginning that what we do very openly and almost loudly as the Jewish community. So our volunteers at the border crossings, we made up jackets, which, Jewish stars, the word chesed, which a lot of Ukrainian Jews know because of the program the Joint Distribution Committee runs in the Ukraine. And so we're very obviously Jewish, but anyone who came to us for help, we would help. But, there's the momentary help, which is very important, the first moment, and then there's the long-term help. So we've done a lot for everybody in terms of that first moment of help, but in terms of long-term, in terms of housing, food, the last 3 months, that has pretty much gone to Ukrainian Jews.
Okay, and how are they being integrated into the community, the local communities? Are they? Yeah.
Right, a very excellent question. So I want to emphasize again that no one here had any experience in this, right? Some of us had experience in different, but no one had experience in how to absorb so many refugees, even a small amount of refugees. So we're learning as we go by. Certainly organizations like the Joint Distribution Committee, which has done this historically, and HIAS, the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society from the United States, has over 100 years experience. They have been helping us to guide us in what we should be doing. But it's been a learning process, and I'm sorry I gave such a good introduction. I forgot your question. Can you please ask me the question?
Are the Ukrainian Jews being integrated into the local community?
Yes. Okay. Now I remember where I was going. Thank you. So the first several months, first 3 months was really just focused on immediate care. 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, I could figure that out. Lag BaOmer. On Lag BaOmer, we did our first integration, a serious integration program. We did seders for the refugees, but because the seder is so heavily language-based, we did, some seders in Hebrew Polish and some in Hebrew Russian. So we didn't feel that would be the right moment to try to integrate. A few people did, because we also had some in English, and there are some Ukrainian refugees who are English speakers. But in terms of doing something on a much bigger level, we did that just on Lag BaOmer, where we invited refugees from 3 different facilities where they're being housed by us to join together with the local community. And by chance, which was really, really very wonderful, a group of American rabbis that were visiting, of 25 rabbis from the RCA, Rabbinic Council of America, and we had close to 300 people. And that was our first real integration program. We're planning again for Shavuot, again, in terms of the learning of Shavuot, the Tikkun Leil Shavuot, the night study of Shavuot, that again is heavily language-based. And so we're running one program in the major hotel where the refugees are, and then also something at the synagogue. Anyone who wants to come to the synagogue can, but the entirely Russian program will be at the refugee hotel. It's trying to integrate, but also to try to meet as many needs as possible. But the next day, for the last 30 years, we've created our informal tradition that on the first day of Shavuot, we have a picnic. This way we can reach out to everyone in the community. Not everyone wants to go to the synagogue. Not everyone's going to want to stay up at night and study. And so we have a picnic. It'll be on Sunday afternoon. And we're expecting about 300 people. That probably 200 from the refugees and 100 from the local community. And we're now looking forward on what other things we can do to integrate the refugees into our community, including 16 of them are already at the Jewish school, at the Lora Marasha school. And we're also planning on a day camp for July, which will have both Ukrainian and Polish Jewish children.
Right. Wow. I know that some Ukrainians are returning home to safer parts of the country, but do others, do they want to stay in Poland, or is it a transit stop? For example, do some of the Jewish people want to go to Israel? And can you help them?
So there really, what I have seen, there are three groups of refugees. There are those that want to go to Israel. Those who want to go to Israel are in contact with the Sochdut, the Jewish agency. The Jewish agency has rented a hotel. They go there. There is consular services there. They begin the process of Aliyah. And usually within 3 to 5 days, more or less, they're on a plane to Israel. So that's one path.
Yeah.
And anyone who wants that, can go. And if the papers are in order, then they go to Israel. The second are people who have family, friends, connections somewhere else in the world, whether it's Germany or England, or I don't know anyone going to Australia yet, but I'm sure you will get some, to North America. Those who don't want to go to Israel, or simply, it's not that they don't want to go to Israel, that, they have a brother in Frankfurt, or a cousin in somewhere in Switzerland. And so they're going to family and sometimes to friends. That's the second group. The third group are people who not sure where they want to go. As you very accurately said before, that men between the ages of 18 and 60 are not permitted to leave the country because they're being mobilized and drafted into the military. And so what we have are overwhelmingly women with little children, with some elderly, which means that almost everyone who's fled has somebody still back in the Ukraine, a father, a son, a husband, sometimes even a grandfather. And so they're thinking, do I want to go too far away? Many do say they want to go back. Some are saying they're never going back. So as in any human situation, you have an entire spectrum of responses. But from what I've heard, many of them do want to go back, but they want to go back when there's the sense of safety.
Yeah, yeah. What do you see as the reasons behind, the reasons for Poland's generosity towards Ukrainian refugees, especially as refugees from the Middle East and Africa had such a different experience?
Yes, and that was something that we fought against, what we thought was a very wrong response to Middle Eastern and African refugees. That's another story for another time. First thing I could say is that it's definitely unbelievably generous and wonderful, open-hearted. That's a fact. Why? I see two reasons. Number one, in any society, you have good people. And in this situation, the government decided to do the right thing, which then empowered all the good people in Poland to actually act. In other words, there are also many people in Poland who are against the government's policy on Middle Eastern African refugees, but they couldn't do a lot. Some people did. Some people tried to get into to the border and help, but it was really hard. It was illegal, and now it was legal. So it really gave a chance for this natural goodness that you find within any society to really flourish. The second reason is probably maybe also talking about the government, is that there's a saying here that you are, to the Ukrainians, you are fighting for your freedom and ours. That there's little doubt that if Putin was able to conquer Ukraine quickly, that Poland could very well be not far behind. That's a whole big discussion of which I don't want to get into because I don't know. But certainly there was a sense that we need to help Ukraine because, as I said, the saying is you're fighting for your democracy and ours. And the third reason is there's a closeness, although there's competition and there's friction between Poles and Ukrainians, there is also a whole lot of similarities. we already had about 1 to 2 million Ukrainians who left the Ukraine, not at the start of the war, but in the last few years, and who were working here, often in what we would call lower paying jobs, which were still much higher paying jobs than in the Ukraine. And so we had and they assimilated very easily into society. A lot of your Uber drivers and food deliveries and factory workers were from the Ukraine, and they kind of fit right into society. So there was also a certain sense, almost I won't say familial, but there was a sense of, these are close to being our people. But in the end, I think what really happened was good people had a chance to do good things.
Right. Given the the rise in rents and the difficulty of finding an apartment to rent and other pressures that the society is under due to the population growth, do you think the goodwill will last? Or
will the goodwill last? The goodwill will last, but will the energy last? That's a tough question. And actually, in all of this, in kind of an unexpected way, I have an even greater respect for righteous Gentiles among the nation. Those non-Jews who saved Jews during the war, who I've always had, the most respect for. But the one thing I didn't really understand is yes, they hit a Jew for 18 months or for 7 months. Besides that it was war and you could have gotten killed, it's not easy to have somebody with you for so long. And it's kind of like on the practical level, I was like, whoa, they're even greater tzaddikim than I thought before, those who did it during the war. I heard of one story, a wonderful couple who was comfortable financially and had a nice sized house and a downstairs and an upstairs, gave an upstairs over to a Ukrainian family, a lovely family. They lived downstairs, but after a few weeks, it was not so comfortable. So this couple went out and rented themselves a different apartment to give the whole house to the Ukrainians. Now that's unusual. But yes, I am aware, and we are aware of the fact that there can and will be burnout.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why really what I'm pushing for now is for several reasons. That's one small reason, but really to help these people find jobs, to help these people find places to live, even if it's hard to find apartments. Perhaps we need to start looking in other cities like in Łódź, Lodz, or Gdańsk, or Lublin, which would also then enhance the local Jewish community. And it's also about giving people self-respect, that they're not just living on charity, but they've got a job, they've got an apartment, they've got a real life. Maybe they'll go back home, maybe they won't, but at least in the meantime, they should have a stable life as possible. And so on finding jobs, I just would like to put it out there. A friend of mine from the United States came up with this idea, which is such a simple idea. I'm frustrated I didn't think of it. Is okay, I'm sorry. Dobrze, do 5, to będzie też dobrze. Przepraszam. I apologize. I got stuck in a taxi because of a delay in what I was doing, but it's all good. So someone came up with the idea. Someone came up with the idea that we should look to hire Ukrainian refugees for remote positions. Now, there's people that work in IT, graphic artists, and other type of professions that very easily are done from another location. For example, in my case, I'm from the States, so my contacts are more in the United States. American companies could hire these people who have enough language ability to work remotely. And the kind of an additional sweet part to this is that the American companies would be paying half the salary and the employees would be making double the salary. So it works out well for everybody. So that's, and I don't know if anybody in Australia, I mean, there's a time difference also. If anybody does, please, I guess they can contact you. You could put them in contact with me, and let's see, hiring one more person with one more job is a mitzvah.
Until they find work, I guess a lot of people are still relying on the generosity from your community. So how do you fund your work? Do you get donations from overseas or?
Yes. Yeah, it's really been just unbelievable how generous the Jewish world has been and is, mostly coming out of North America, which is the largest Jewish community. It's a real testament to the Jewish heart, the Jewish neshama, the Jewish generosity. It's never been so easy to fundraise, and people now. I'm also concerned that may also wane with time, but it hasn't happened yet. So while we've had tremendous expenses, the Jewish community of Poland's contribution really has been the work on the ground. The funding has come from Jewish communities abroad. And we are very grateful to them because, we are partners. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without the financial and material support that we receive from overseas.
Right. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much, Rabbi Schudrich. My colleague Estelle has been fielding some questions from the audience, and I thought it might be time to pass to her to see to hear from her. How are you going, Estelle?
Hi there, everyone.
Good
Welcome,
pleasure.
Rabbi.
Hi.
I don't actually have any questions. Lying. I am lying. What are you aware of the number of Jewish deaths in the Ukraine, in the civilian community and in the military?
No, I don't have that information, and I don't even want to. We have heard stories of this person being killed, that person being killed, but I don't know.
Okay. And what is your view of the Putin-Russian claim that Ukraine is infested with neo-Nazis?
It's very simply a lie. Neo-Nazis is a problem all over Europe, North America. I'm not familiar with Australia, so I can't venture an opinion about Australia, so I won't. But it is a problem today. The far right, the neo-Nazis all over Europe and also in North America. Probably the greatest problem is North America. And so it's just to claim that he's invading a country because there are so many neo-Nazis, it's just an outright lie.
What is the general level of Ukrainian Jewish knowledge and engagement? Are they of assistance to local Polish Jewish community?
Okay. Well, as any other Jewish community in the world, you have those people who are very traditional. You have, of course, everyone there. There were very few observant traditional Jews by the fall of communism, but some of them have become observant, over the last 30 years. Some very, very observant, and there are some people who are very ignorant, kind of just like any other Jewish community.
Sounds pretty normal.
And so, it's pretty normal. I would say, I don't know why, but here in Warsaw, most of the people that we have are not traditional. When we did our Seder for refugees, several of them, I don't know what statistic, but not one or two, it was their first Seder ever. And so we're honored that we could help not only save their lives, but also enhance their Judaism. And I think what we're seeing now, and I think this is something very important for people to realize, is that we have succeeded in saving them from death. Now we need to be able to give them back lives. And that's why I'm pushing now for finding apartments and finding jobs. We saved them from death. Now we need to give them life again.
That's profound. Beyond this crisis, What do you hope the legacy will be for your community of this generosity?
People realize that, we can also give. We're not only a society that needs give us, but we can give to others.
That's true. How much do you think some of the Polish generosity in assisting Ukrainian refugees is supported by the government so as to reinforce their political narrative that Poland has always been a nation that assists the victims and rescuers during war?
All I can tell you is from what we're doing, we're basically entirely funded by by donations from overseas and some from the local Jewish community. What the government has doing is they've given them basic health care, which is amazing. But outside of that, pretty much everything else that we have been doing.
I note that there is funding for Ukrainian children to about 500 zlotys per month. And I'm also aware that
you want us to enter and you will join
from
us
21 that the Polish government was funding Polish children, but to a much lesser degree. How much animosity do you think that might create, if any?
We'll see.
Yeah.
It's the government decision. Poles also received this 500 zloty, so it's not like they're not getting it. And so we'll see.
Yeah, they don't receive as much. They receive about half, even if they've got about 3 children. That's
right.
We'll see.
Right. So I haven't heard it. But then again, I don't live in the villages. I live in a big city. But certainly within the Jewish community, I haven't heard that. But they very, very well could happen.
So other than Warsaw and Krakow, who are very engaged in this rescue operation, are there any other communities that are as engaged?
Yes, Lublin has people that they're housing at the Yeshivat Chachmei Lublin, and the Jewish community of Łódź, of Lodz, also in there. They have a small hotel, and they've turned it over for refugees. So they're really those 4 communities, and other communities have done a little bit otherwise. But those are the 4 big community, the 4 major, the 4 communities doing the major bulk of the work. That's what I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm. If the Ukrainian Jews had very little knowledge of Judaism, how have they engaged with their Jewish identities and heritage prior to this war? I think you may have answered some of that.
Yeah, I don't know. And all I can tell you is there's a spectrum, and different people did different things like everywhere else. My focus is not what did they do in the past, is what can I do for them? What can I do for them tomorrow?
I think that's what we have here.
Okay. You're done, Estelle?
I think we're done.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you, Rabbi Schudrich, for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating discussion. And thank you to everyone watching. If you want to explore more about Polish Jewish affairs, please take a look at the ASPJ page on Facebook or our website at polishjews.org.au. We have constant news updates and hold 2 major annual events, the Slavic Award in honour of those who have enhanced the bond between Polish and Jewish communities, and the ASPJ Oration, a lecture by a distinguished guest. Okay, everybody, have a great night and have a great day, Rabbi Schudrich.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to visiting you down under at some time in the future.
Oh, I hope that's the case.
Okay, have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.